we explore the depths of holistic health, uncovering the interconnectedness of our emotions, mind, body, and spirit. This podcast is dedicated to individuals who are on a quest to uncover their truth, understanding their genetic and spiritual DNA, and learning how to harness this knowledge to achieve optimal health. But this isn't just another health podcast. The Natural Health Podcast is here to ignite a spark of hope within you, reminding you of your innate potential for greatness. You are pure love, capable of living life to its fullest expression. Are you ready to embark on a transformational journey to achieve optimal health? Today on the Natural Health Podcast, we're joined by someone whose healing journey has become a beacon of hope for people living with chronic illness. Brad Pitzele, founder of 1000 Roads. Brad spent years navigating debilitating symptoms such as autoimmune arthritis, melanoma, Lyme disease, Bartonella, fatigue, brain fog, and significant loss of mobility. Conventional treatments came with risks and nothing was truly restoring his body. Everything changed when Brad turned to oxygen therapy. He couldn't find an oxygen system that met his needs. He engineered one himself, and the results were life-changing. Within months, his cognitive function, energy, physical strength, and vitality began to rebound. His doctor noticed and asked him to build systems for more patients. That moment sparked the birth of 1000 Roads. Today, Brad combines engineering, lived experience, and a deep understanding of chronic illness to educate people about exercise with oxygen therapy, oxygen-driven mitochondrial repair, red and infrared light therapy, and how oxygen can be one of the most overlooked therapeutic tools for reversing inflammation, supporting detox, recovering from chronic infections, and improving longevity. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Brad. Thank you for joining us, and I'm so excited to talk all things oxygen with you. But before we get there, I hear that you love to play guitar. Tell us a little bit about that. Are we an extreme guitarist? Are we a bass? What are we?
I'm not a very good guitarist, but my grandfather was a professional jazz musician.
Amazing.
And so somewhere along the line, at probably middle school, I picked up guitar, and I like to fiddle around with it here and there.
Yeah, nice. That would have been amazing to grow up to listening to some jazz music live.
Yeah, absolutely. He didn't play much. By the time I was born, he had moved on to painting, so I did get to appreciate some of his paintings. But yeah, he played music for a living, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, amazing. And just before we spoke, you were telling us a little bit about you being in actually Australia, that you were here in Sydney for a while and then in Melbourne. How did you find the Australian, the down underland?
I loved Australia. It was amazing. I got to live 6 months. I lived in Australia, and I made it to Canberra, to Melbourne, up to Cairns. And it was a wonderful experience. It's such a laid back culture and so diverse, and it's cool. I mean, the coolest parts were you'd get out and see things, and it's just so much less crowded than it is in America to go out and see things. So we'd go out to some natural parks, and in the weekdays you wouldn't see a single person. It wasn't until the weekends you'd cross into somebody else, and all the temperate rainforests and all that. It was just amazing.
Yeah, magical. So you actually explored a large portion of Australia in your 6 months, did you say? That's amazing. So you did Queensland, Victoria, ACT,
Yep.
New South Wales. Did you make your way into the middle of Australia at all?
Didn't do the middle or the west coast, but at
Yeah.
the end, what we did was we rented a car and bought a tent, and we camped our way up the east coast from Sydney up
Beautiful.
to Fraser Island and maybe a little bit beyond, and then back. And then, but did some also Great Ocean Road out there by you guys in Melbourne was, obviously just an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's literally half an hour from me. So I live on the water there. So absolutely amazing. I'm glad you got to enjoy that beautiful part of the world.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love
Yeah,
it.
amazing. Did you see any dingoes up in Fraser Island?
No, we didn't see any dingoes, actually, interestingly enough. But we had to hike through that island quite a bit, and in the sand and everything. So surprisingly not.
Amazing, amazing. And now you call Dallas home, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, beautiful. Did you grow up in Dallas or?
I grew up in Chicago, and then one cold winter I was done with it and moved out to Southern California for about 6 years, and then over here to Dallas.
Nice. You've traveled a bit.
Yeah. I've done a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, in your introduction, I spoke about all the things that you've been through, health-wise. Give us a little bit of an idea of Brad's journey, your life, and what's led you to like where you are exactly now.
Yeah, I had weird like health things going on from a young age, but they were things that kind of came and went. We'd go see the doctor and they'd give it a name. There was no real treatment, or maybe it was like a steroid cream for this or something, but it would just kind of go away and I'd move on. But then about 2010 or 11, I started to develop autoimmune arthritis and things became more serious and went to see a rheumatologist and he put me on some anti-rheumatic drugs and they would help for a while and then they'd wear off and then I was kind of in worse shape and then he'd double the dose and then that one would wear off and we go to another drug in the same class. Um, and it seemed like every time they wore off, I was in a lower kind of place than I was the last time. And then I ended up getting melanoma. And unfortunately, one of the side effects of these drugs is they increase the risk of cancer and specifically melanoma. And I went back to my rheumatologist and said, well, what do we do? I kind of feel like I'm between a rock and a hard place here. Either I don't use the drugs to avoid cancer and I become crippled with arthritis and a very painful life, or I take the drugs and it's just a matter of time before I develop cancer and, become very ill. And the doctor didn't seem phased. He was kind of like, well, we'll try another drug in the same category. And it just freaked me out. So I left and I was like, man, I just need to find a third way out of this because neither of these is really good.
What
And
did your symptoms, before you go further, what did your symptoms look like? What were they when you had the, yeah,
Yeah, they were progressive. First, it was like stiffness in my hands.
okay.
You can even see my knuckle, this little knuckle here today. I still have the scars of arthritis. It was in my hands were really weak and stiff. Later, it was in my feet and my toes.
So it was hard
And
to
then,
walk and get around.
yes, and then I started to get new symptoms. All of a sudden, the backs of my legs became very stiff. Like it felt like I'd run an ultra marathon. I'd wake up and I couldn't even bend them. I'd get in the shower and turn it as hot as I possibly could and like bend
Okay.
down and touch my toes as much as I could in the shower, hoping it would like stretch them out. I don't think it did anything. And then I started getting these like nerve pain on the bottom of my feet. And the way I describe it, that to try to help people understand what it felt like, it really felt like someone had beaten the bottom of my feet with a meat hammer. So every step was excruciating, and the only way I could get around in the world was there was like two pair of shoes that would work for me. There was a pair of dress shoes I found that were okay, and a pair of like jogging shoes that were pretty decent. And like at my worst, I couldn't get out of bed and go to the toilet in the middle of the night without having those shoes on. It was that bad. Um, and I went back to that rheumatologist I remember and said, "Hey, this stiffness and this pain in my feet, is this arthritis?" And he just looked at me like I had a horn growing out of my head. He's like, "No, that's not arthritis." And I was like, "What is he talking about? Like, this is clearly all part of the same thing."
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it was, and I really like that rheumatologist. I don't mean to like dog on him, but I was just like, there just wasn't answers in rheumatology for me. And I just
Were you referred to anyone else, or was it just solely a rheumatologist?
really just rheumatology. I mean,
Yeah.
arthritis. They thought they nailed the diagnosis, so they're really and like, hey, we're giving you the drugs, and like, don't worry. And actually, I lived in the town, a town in Southern California, where one of those big drug makers who make some of the rheumatology drugs are. So some of my friends worked for him, like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna be coming out with new versions of this drug. We're working on them right now, sort of thing. Um, and so I just started doing my own research. I was crawling around on PubMed and looking at research and on any topic related to autoimmunity and arthritis and what could be causing it and different things. And I became my own kind of human pincushion. I was trying everything I could.
Yeah. So you went on PubMed. I mean, the usual individual wouldn't just go on PubMed. Did you have any history with looking at like what's your background?
Um, well, I'm an engineer.
Okay, that
Excuse me.
makes sense.
But it goes a little deeper than that. So, my firstborn daughter, she has Down syndrome.
Okay.
And one of the first things I learned about people with Down syndrome is they will all develop the plaque tangles associated with Alzheimer's in their 40s and 50s. and 75% of them will go on to have Alzheimer's early. And so from her earliest days, I knew I was kind of looking down the barrel of a gun. So I had spent a lot of time researching Down syndrome and researching Alzheimer's, which interestingly enough has a lot of, there's a lot of reason to potentially believe Alzheimer's is an autoimmune condition. So I'd already found myself in that world. It was just a kind of a new path. It was a new focus area within it.
So PubMed was bookmarked on your laptop.
At least memorize, if not bookmark. Yeah.
I love it.
And then I went to a doctor, a holistic doctor, when I moved to Dallas, and he wanted to test me for Lyme disease. And I was just like, he was trying everything and nothing was working. He's like, we're going to test you for Lyme disease. And I was just like, I snickered inside. I'm like, I don't have Lyme disease. I was never bitten by a tick. I never had that bullseye rat. I'm going to pay the money and do the test just so the doc knows, so we can focus on the real. Well,
yeah, of course.
The test came back and I had Lyme disease and one of its co-infections known as Bartonella. And, so
you don't remember getting bitten or anything like that? You never had a bite?
I never was. That's kind of a misconception that's put out there. Lyme disease can be transferred a variety of different ways. And when you get it, you normally get at least one of several co-infections, and they kind of like partner up together to beat you up. And mine was something called Bartonella. Also, it's the bacteria that's known to cause cat scratch fever or cat scratch disease. And it's known for that. It got that name for two reasons. One, it's very common in feral cats. And number two, it'll leave rashes on you that look like cat scratches. And it's also known to be transmitted through feral cat scratches. They scratch you on the skin, and that's how you get it. Well, when I was in kindergarten, we took in a feral cat, and I got a lot of scratches from it. And by second grade, I started to have weird autoimmune things. So I suspect that's where I got it.
Isn't that crazy, the link? And it takes so long for you to potentially get symptoms or for your immune system to react.
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane. So yeah, that infection was found and you're like, okay, here we go. Another thing. I've got another thing now. Adding to the list.
That's right. And
so you did a lot of PubMed research on Lyme's disease?
Once you get Lyme disease too, the research is really not great.
Correct.
Excuse me. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. And so, then it was also reading books. I read so many books on Lyme disease, going in group chats on, various places and seeing what people were talking about and what they were trying. And I just became my own, human experiment. I tried so many things. I mean, dietary changes, supplements, herbs, antibiotics, all sorts of modalities.
Is that to help the Lyme or was that to help the arthritis or both?
Well, my thesis was the arthritis was a net result of the Lyme disease. And if I was able to keep my infections under control, then I wouldn't have the symptomology. And that seems to be where I landed.
Amazing. So what did you trial? Like, did you trial any pharmaceuticals to assist with the Lyme? Did you try, like you said, herbs, supplements? What were the trials?
I mean, I tried everything. I did diet modification. I was on the paleo autoimmune protocol diet, which is like super restrictive, no sugars, no carbs, no nightshades, no beans, no dairy, no alcohol, no caffeine for a while. I joked that I basically eliminated anything that brought joy to my life.
I was going to say, that would have potentially affected a bit of the mental health, restricting yourself so much. Did it?
I was in such bad shape and so desperate. I was going to do anything. I mean,
fair.
I tried supplements. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat.
All good.
I tried all sorts of supplements. I tried all sorts of herbs. I read all of Stephen Buhner's herbal protocols, and that man is a genius. And I tried every herb in his book many times.
Yeah.
Other herbs that weren't his book. I tried frequency meds. I've tried infrared saunas, ozone saunas, different ozone treatments. I mean, there probably isn't much out there that I tried.
And was that through a period of time? Was that for a year, 2 years, 3 years that you were?
Well, I started in probably 2014 modifying my diet and everything else. It probably wasn't until 2017 that I was diagnosed with Lyme. And I
Yeah.
would say, I wasn't fully recovered from it until 2019 or 2020 so it was in that period of time, I did so many things, just so
Yeah.
many things. I mean, it's rare for me to hear someone talk about a modality they tried today that I haven't tried, or at least didn't hear about, and probably more likely try.
Did you see any of them that you trialed that definitely didn't do any benefits, and ones that actually you saw a little bit of a change or most change?
So I'm like what I call a non-responder. Nothing
Okay.
worked. So when you have Lyme disease, if you take something and it has a big impact on the infectious agent, you'll get something known as die-off or a detox reaction, and you just feel feverish and chills and like you're hungover or you have the flu. And man, I would try everything. I was just like hoping for this detox reaction because then I knew I was like moving the needle, and nothing worked. I mean, absolutely nothing. And I was very consistent. Like I said, I was pretty scared for my health and my well-being. So I was, my doctor, he would always say I was kind of an ideal patient because, he said march and I was like marching, and there was no stopping me, so to speak. But nothing really worked for a long, long time.
Man, how did you manage life throughout that? Yes, you were, one side of you was researching all that, trying to fix yourself or find out what's happening, trialing these things, but then you also have life.
Yeah. I had young children at the beginning of this. And on top of that, I was working a full-time job, but I was like faking it, man. I was like, at the worst of it, I would just like fake it. My feet hurt so bad. I worked at this one company, and like the parking was so far from my desk. It was like a half-mile walk. And I walked so slow. I was watching like people who were like morbidly obese walking faster than me. And I used to be a fast walker. I'd get into work. I'd hide at my desk all day and hope no one brought me into a meeting because the brain fog and just no energy. And yeah, I was like faking it all day at work as best I could. I was taking naps all weekend just to be able to go to work and fake it. And, I was barely there for my kids some of the time. There were times I'd get down on the floor and play with the kids, and then I would be like out of it for 3 days just for like 20 minutes on the floor or 10 minutes on the floor. So, it was real. I'll say
Yeah,
that it was real.
100%. 100%. And would you say now you're in remission, you're recovered? Like, do you still have flares? Like, what would you say?
I'm 99% better is what I'd say. So,
That's
like,
amazing.
I don't have any symptoms today, yesterday, last week, last month, but maybe 2, 3 times a year when it's like rainy, I'll feel a little stiffness in this like knuckle, probably a 2 on the pain scale, maybe a 3. And early on when that happened, I would just have like total PTSD. I'd be like, oh my God, it's coming back. What am I going to like? This is so scary. And then I'd kind of forget about it and I'd move on with my day, and I'd realize at the end of that day or the next day it was like gone. And like, but it's funny, you can't experience the 2 or 3 immediately. You're remembering the 8s and the 10s and like everything that went with it. And it takes a while to be like, wait a second, like we're not gonna overreact. This is stupid. It's gonna be gone. But
Yeah.
that's really the impact to me.
And
It
what you
doesn't affect my life at all.
experience is so normal. Like, I hear a lot of people say, like, as soon as they get that little tingle or that little headache or that little thing that kind of they know leads to something further down the track, and he has in the past, it's like, yeah, literally PTSD. The brain
Yeah.
remembers, and it's kind of like, warning, warning, save yourself, do this, do this. So to talk yourself out of it would have taken very strong a very strong mental headspace to be like, no, 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 this is not what that is. We're different now.
That's right, and it took me a while. That didn't happen, the first, because it only happens infrequently, and, now it's like, now if it happens, I'm like, I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, there's my old friend. How you doing, buddy? You only got a day, and I'm kicking you back out, so have
Yeah,
fun."
I love that. Make the most out of your day.
Yeah.
So, what was the biggest impact? I know we're talking today about oxygen. I'm guessing it's had a role with it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, oxygen did amazing things for me, but if I'm, to be honest, it was not an immediate fix for me.
Okay.
We have folks who use oxygen and they see results like first session, first week. I took 3 months before I noticed differences. So oxy- oxygen is just so powerful. The thing people don't know is every year past the age of 25, your body loses 1% of its ability to utilize oxygen. And that's even if you're healthy, right? So that doesn't mean much at 32, but by the time you get to 50, you've lost 25% of your body's ability to utilize oxygen. And your cells need oxygen to produce energy. So your cells can produce energy without oxygen, but for every molecule of glucose, it can only produce about 5% of the energy without oxygen that it can produce with oxygen. And the net result of that is your body is just kind of like on life support. Like it turns off
Exhausted.
non-essential. Yeah, it turns off non-essential functions. It won't detoxify, won't take out the trash. And by the way, when it's producing energy without oxygen, it's called anaerobic respiration. It produces a massive amount of metabolic waste products like lactic acid, and they just build up in the cell wall and clog up all the machinery, so to speak. And it's certainly exhaustion, and I can tell you about that firsthand. But it goes deeper. It goes to cellular repair. It goes to detoxification. It goes to whatever that cell is supposed to do, whether it's in your heart, your brain, your skin. It just can't do it at the function it's supposed to if it's only at 5% energy level.
Yeah. So you're saying age, reduces it by 1%. What age is one factor, but are there any other factors? Like, so for example, someone might have a less ability to produce oxygen than a 30-year-old compared to another 30-year-old. What other aspects would impact that?
Well, it I have a hard time using impact here, but here's the truth of the matter is anywhere in your body you have inflammation, you have oxygen starvation. And anywhere you have oxygen starvation, you have inflammation. So there's two sides of the same coin, and I can't tell you which necessarily causes the other. But if you can reoxygenate those tissues, you can turn off the inflammation. We know that. So if you've got an inflammatory disease, which basically any chronic disease out there, it has inflammation at the root of it, you have issues. If you're in a stressful situation and you're producing a lot of oxidation in your body and you have a lot of inflammation, well, then you're dealing with oxygen deficit. And so at the root of it, it's about how can we reoxygenate ourselves. And there's a gentleman named von Ardeen. He was a Austrian inventor and physicist. He invented like the scanning electron microscope and was partially responsible for the commercialization of televisions in the 1930s. He turned his attention to looking at oxygen in the 1960s and 70s. And what he found is basically our capillaries, the very ends of our circulatory system, are thinner than a human hair. And this inflammation that builds up as we age, we now call it inflammaging, it actually chokes off the capillaries. So red blood cells can't get through and deliver oxygen downstream. And you have this oxygen starvation causing inflammation and cellular dysfunction.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's a huge issue, and I know that oxygen deprivation is literally one of the major causes of cancer and disease.
You're
It's
right.
been
Yeah.
it's been proven a numerous amount of times, and it's not really spoken about because we
No.
talk about cancer is caused because of food, because of genetics, because of so many things. But yeah, it's hypothermia. It's not spoken about. Not having enough oxygen in our cells is literally
Right.
not spoken about a lot, and it's a huge cause of cancer. And I'm guessing that
Yes.
might have been an impact that happened to you. It might have impacted you, and this is why oxygen therapy. Yes, it did take 3 months, but it had a huge effect on your health.
Yeah, you're right. And a ton of research on the links between oxygen starvation and cancer. And as you said, it's linked to eating these bad foods. Well, a lot of these foods that have pesticides, they have dyes and industrial like whatever they're putting in our food. What do you think they do? They cause inflammation. They starve our body of oxygen. So that's your linkage. And if you just think about, if you're someone who's at middle age and you think, man, I just don't have the energy I had in my 20s and maybe in my 30s, that's a direct result of oxygen. At the end of the day, the gating factor for how much energy your body produces is how much oxygen our cells have. And then, like you said, Otto Warburg proved in the 1920s, and he won the Nobel Prize for proving he could turn any cell into a cancer cell just by depriving it of oxygen. I mean, that's how long we've known about it. And to your point, no one likes to talk about that. Even people who are doing traditional cancer treatments, chemotherapy and radiation, excuse me, I don't know what's up with my froggy throat this afternoon. But even those folks, those are oxidative therapies. They don't work unless there's the presence of oxygen. So
Isn't that crazy? That's
it is.
absolutely insane. So tell us a little bit about oxygen, right? So how would someone know that they are not producing enough oxygen? Is there a test that they can do? Can they test themselves? What are the tests that we're looking at?
Well, you can't really, because there's not a test out there to know this. Because at the end of the day, you can put a pulse oximeter on your finger and it'll measure how saturated your red blood cells are. But here's the problem with that. Most of us have saturated red blood cells, but that's still not getting the oxygen to the tissue. So as I mentioned, your capillaries start swelling and the red blood cells can't get through. The other thing that happens is your red blood cells are actually larger than your smallest capillaries. And the way they get into your capillaries is they fold like a taco to get in. And so their flexibility is incredibly important to deliver oxygen to that last mile where the tissues are absorbing it. And as you get into a disease state or an inflamed state, that affects the flexibility of the red blood cells. So they can carry oxygen all day, and you won't actually get it to your tissues. So what I would say is pretty much anyone in Western society who's past age 25, you're losing the ability today. And 25 to 35, you're probably not going to feel it. But as you start feeling your age, there's actually a quote I love. There's a gentleman named Arthur Guyton. Arthur Guyton wrote medical physiology textbook that every doctor you've ever seen has had to read in medical school. It's been around since the 1950s and it's still used today. And he stated, he's like, at the root of every disease is a lack of oxygen. And that's it. Like, so if your cells have what they need and your mitochondria have the oxygen they need, then your body can produce the energy it needs to renew itself, to rid itself of wastes, and just energy to live your life, and every organ and every system to perform at its best.
Yeah. And you being an engineer, you would have looked at how the body works and all the systems involved and been like, oh my gosh, oxygen is literally necessary for this function, for that function, for this function, and just been mind blown that it's not really like, I know I keep talking about it, but it's not spoken about. Oxygenation is not spoken about. But when you think about it, it's literally what we do every day. We breathe in, we need oxygen to live. We literally need it compared to food and water. And, and there's a lot of people around there also who have sleep apnea where they actually are not oxygenating themselves during the sleep, or they are,
right.
their oxygen levels drop dramatically. And that's got, just that in itself has a huge impact on the individuals. And they see that once, I guess, they're diagnosed with it. So we also see how important oxygen is during our sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And when you start getting better oxygenation in your body, you start sleeping better, you have more energy in the day, you just feel clearer headed. I mean, just so many benefits. It took me 3 months because I describe it like the bath. I use this bathtub analogy. It's kind of like I was so inflamed. I was in such bad state. It's like I imagine my inflammation like water in a bathtub, and you pull the drain And if you stare at it and you stare at it 30 seconds later, the water hasn't gone down at all in your mind. And but if you walk away and come back in 10 minutes, you're like, oh, wow, it's really moved. So it takes a while to get enough of that inflammation out of your system to start to notice benefits. But yeah, it will help quench inflammation over time when used right.
Yeah. Some people listening might be like, Brad, I can just breathe, can't I? And then I'll just get more oxygen.
Well, yeah, you could. There's a few ways you can get more oxygen. There are some breathing methods that will increase your oxygenation, but here's the deal. The main problem with them is they're going to use your same red blood cells. So if those red blood cells are not flexible, if your capillaries are inflamed, you could have all the oxygen you need on your red blood cells, but it may never get to the end runs in the cells that need it. So we need to find a way around that. And there's two modalities out there that will help you do that. The first one people have heard about quite a bit usually, which is hyperbaric oxygen. And in hyperbaric oxygen, you lay on your back and you use high pressures to push more oxygen through your lung membrane. And it doesn't just fill your red blood cells with oxygen, it actually diffuses into your blood plasma, which is this like clearish brown liquid that the red blood cells ride on. It doesn't normally carry a lot of oxygen. However, in certain conditions, you can saturate it. And the great thing about blood plasma is it's about 1,000 times thinner than a red blood cell, so we can get into those capillaries. The challenge with hyperbaric oxygen is a hard shell one is something you have to do in a doctor's office. They cost six figures, hundreds of thousands of dollars, need to be medically supervised. If you want to go in and use one, it's probably going to cost you $300 to $500 a visit, and you're going to spend 60 to 90 minutes in there. There's soft shell ones you can do at home. They're more like $25,000. And again, you're still going to spend an hour inside of it. So for most folks, those are both cost and time prohibitive. We do something a little bit different. It's called exercise with oxygen therapy, or EWOT. And what you do is you effectively do 15 minutes of cardiovascular exercise while you're breathing near pure oxygen. And so we're taking advantage of all the physiological changes that your body goes through when you exercise. Because when you're exercising, your body immediately recognizes it's about to go into an oxygen deficit. And so you adapt, you start breathing deeper, your lung membrane thins, you're breathing faster, so you're diffusing more oxygen through your lungs and into your blood. And then your heart beats faster and deeper, your blood vessels dilate or open up to bring a larger volume of blood. And as you can imagine, that's particularly important if you have, you have capillaries that are inflamed. And so we're taking advantage of all that physiological changes, and you can get about 12 hours worth of oxygen in a 15-minute session.
That is amazing. I love that you're utilizing what the body already does and you're just stacking on top of it to use the oxygen. That is amazing. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? Is it heavy? Is it big? Is it small? And yeah.
Yeah. So our systems look like what we do is we use a device that purifies oxygen out of the air. So the air is 21% oxygen at sea level, and we purify it up to 93% oxygen. We have two different size devices, one that produces 5 liters of oxygen a minute and the other that produces 10. And neither one of those is strong enough to support exercise, because when you're exercising, you can use 50 or 60 liters of oxygen. So what we do is we take those devices and we fill a large reservoir. It's about 1,000 liters. So it's let's just say metric system, 2 meters by 2 meters, kind of looks like a big pillow. And we fill that with oxygen. And then there's a hose hooked up to a mask. And you put a mask on and you do 15 minutes of exercise, usually cardio. Some people do weightlifting, calisthenics. Just depends where they are in their health journey. We have folks who are really sick, right? And they can't even imagine getting on a treadmill or an elliptical machine for 15 minutes. So they might start by just doing light exercises, stretches, jumping on a rebounder, even just getting in an infrared sauna to get their heart. It's anything to really get your heart rate up while you're breathing the oxygen. Um, and some folks don't notice a difference in how it feels. It doesn't feel any different. Other folks will tell you the oxygen feels cooling. It feels cooling. And the very first benefit everyone almost notices is that the exercise immediately gets easier. So
Yeah. Well, it
it
would.
yeah,
You're
exactly.
like, all of a sudden I can sprint.
And you're amazed because like for me, when I started, I was already exercising, and I describe it like I was using my elliptical machine at a resistance of 12. And then I started doing this and I was like, 12 is not good enough. 13, 14, 15, and today I do it at like 17 out of 20 resistance, which is kind of crazy high, but I don't feel like I'm, kicking my butt. It's just your ability to exercise goes up rather quickly.
And that's, I guess, the misconception that I believe is that people think that this is solely used for elite athletes, which, yes, it has its space. Correct
Yes, it
me
does.
if I'm wrong. It has its space where it can definitely improve athletic performance. But then there's also those people that you said that literally can't even get up and walk.
Yeah, no, you're right. So actually, a lot of the research was done by Olympic teams. And it does a lot for athletic performance. VO2 max increases, reduced recovery time, lactic acid reduction, improved strength, power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there is no doubt about that. Most of our customers are on a healing journey, or they're interested in their long-term wellness, and it does so much for that. So I was mentioning Von Ardeen, who discovered this capillary swelling. So he's like the godfather of exercise with oxygen therapy. And what he found is that when you exercise with oxygen, not only does the plasma get by those blockages in the immediate and fuels those downstream cells, but it produces this powerful anti-inflammatory effect on those capillaries, and it reduces the swelling so red blood cells can get through. And he had like elderly people just do this 2 or 3 times, and they came back weeks later and he found that their capillaries were still reestablishing normal blood flow. So it's anti-aging. It gives you more energy. It reduces inflammation, which is at the root of pretty much every chronic illness, including, cancer, autoimmunity, long COVID, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue. I mean, just the list goes
You
on and
name it.
on.
You name it.
Yeah.
What about the people that are worrying? Because as soon as we talk about oxygen, we can look at the other side and look at free radicals or, reactive oxygen species that may be created with oxygen. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there's no, they've looked at that, and there's no increase in free radicals from this. Often, a lot of times, free radicals actually happen um, in situations where there's not enough oxygen too. So if you look at the mitochondria, where oxygen is utilized, there's basically a flow of electrons. There's the electron transport chain. And when that breaks down, when there's not enough oxygen to oxidize some of those radicals and so forth, that's when you start having this imbalance that causes these chain reactions and causes a lot of these free radicals. So, um, they've looked at the oxidative state, especially in some of these athletes, and some of the, they couldn't find any change in oxidative states of folks from using these therapies.
Amazing. Let's talk about the mitochondria as you said it. What happens? So when you're doing the oxygen therapy with exercise, what happens to the mitochondria when there's all of a sudden all of this oxygen?
Well, so we actually like to pair exercise with oxygen therapy with red and near infrared light. And so when you start doing EWOT, it's a massive supply of oxygen. And so then what you would do is you do a 15-minute session, flood your body with oxygen. It's getting delivered to cells that were starved, including mitochondria. They have more energy. They're able to produce more ATP, which is their energy source. They're able to have more mitogenesis, which means producing new mitochondria to replace old and damaged ones. And with that energy, the cell's able to do everything it needs to do: cellular repair, cell division and new cells, etc. So whether that be your brain, your heart, or your muscles, they're getting the fuel they need to do everything they need to do at their best. We pair it with red and near infrared light because the effects of red and near infrared light are caused by two different sort of phenomenon. The first thing they do is they increase circulation to wherever you're placing those lights. So obviously that means more oxygen delivery. But the second thing they do, and the more powerful thing they do, is they cause the mitochondria to demand more oxygen. And so we pair these together. You flood the body with a supply of oxygen, and then you effectively turn on the engines in the mitochondria to suck all that oxygen in, and you really can ramp up mitochondria ATP production in a huge fashion. And it's actually pretty fascinating. The reasons why red and near infrared light are so important is we're generally deprived of them in our kind of current environments. We used to get these naturally in natural doses from the sun, but then we moved indoors, and then especially since we've switched over to LED lights are very energy efficient. And the reasons why they're very energy efficient is they've eliminated heat and they've eliminated frequencies of light that don't produce good illumination. They don't help us see things. And those happen to be: red is an illumination that does not help you read anything or see anything very well, and it produces more heat. And near infrared is experienced generally as heat on the body. And so they purposefully block these wavelengths when they produce LED lights. Good for energy efficiency, but then it causes a deficit in us. And so it's actually pretty interesting when you realize the biological machinery is tuned to, these natural wavelengths of sun. And so when you can replace it, all of a sudden your body is working better.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I could talk about LED lights for hours and hours and hours, even the flickering effect that it has on the nervous system. And yes, look, of course, it's the sole purpose of those lights was for energy saving. So therefore they've achieved that. However, like the body and like everything else, like with your experience, you can't just look at it and be like, oh, it's just arthritis. Oh, it's just Lyme disease. You need to take the whole picture in, and they've definitely missed that mark with not taking the whole picture in. And they've definitely achieved their goal of, energy efficiency, but with that, it comes with a cost.
That's right.
But going on to the red light therapy, I love that so this is amazing. Okay, so first of all, you're using exercise, which is a natural ability. Then you're adding oxygen to it. And then you're stacking it with red light and infrared light therapy. That is like absolutely amazing. You're literally stacking three things together that are just so beneficial for the human body, for the cells, for the mitochondria, and for the body to have more oxygen. So where do you place the red light? Is it specifically on a brain region? Is it specifically on the heart, on the throat? Is it all over?
Well, I prefer, it depends is the short answer. Usually the protocol we use is we have folks do the EWOT, the exercise with oxygen therapy. They do their 15-minute cardio session, let's say, and then immediately while their body has this excess supply of oxygen, we have them get under the red light. We use panels because we're generally looking for systemic benefits.
Yeah.
So the more skin coverage you get, the more benefits you're going to get. We have lights that have like 8 different wavelengths and 4 reds and 4 infrareds. And so each wavelength penetrates different layers into the body so it affects different tissues. But it really depends. For general wellness, the more of the body coverage you're getting, the better. And then for folks who have a specific injury, like you hurt your elbow or something like that, you want to make sure you're covering those damaged areas so those cells are getting all the energy they need to repair and rejuvenate.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love the acute therapy with like injuries and so forth, and then the overall thing. It would be interesting to see what it does, putting the light on, like, the hypothalamus pituitary gland with those parts of the brain, and just seeing how that might affect, things like Alzheimer's that you spoke about earlier, and things like brain injuries or brain things, or even like autism or ADHD, focus and
Yeah.
things like that. Have you had, what type of people have you had come in and do the oxygen therapy?
We have a lot of folks with cancer. We have a lot of folks with Lyme and long COVID. To your point about brain injuries, we have folks who have CTE/concussions. We have
Yeah.
stroke survivors. We have folks with Alzheimer's, with Parkinson's, all sorts of, and just folks who are just having memory issues, and fatigue issues and brain fog issues for various reasons. It's helped with. There's actually a really well-known doctor in the Alzheimer's or the cognitive decline space, Dr. Bredesen, and he's designed this protocol called RECODE, which is reversing cognitive decline. And him and his clinic have gotten really big into EWOT as well, and recommending it to folks as part of his protocol.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. So you've got people have you got like elite athletes who are trying to achieve the optimal state?
We do. We have some athletes out there that are using it for performance enhancement, definitely.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see where that goes. What about the people that are concerned and been like, Brad, this has probably only been around or been used for a few years. What's the research say? Is there any long-term side effects? I know we've spoken about the benefits, but what about those people that are just like, I'm not too sure. There's not much information on this.
So I was mentioning Von Ardeen started his research in the 1960s and 70s, and folks have been using it since then. Hyperbaric oxygen is a very close cousin that's been around for a very long time. For me personally, when I was trying to look for different modalities, the thing I loved about oxygen was, at the end of the day, the worst case scenario is I get too much oxygen. Like, I will tell you, there is one risk with oxygen. There's something called oxygen toxicity. That's the only risk, really. Well, there's two risks. One is oxygen's not flammable like gasoline, but it's an accelerant. And so if you already have a fire burning, it can make it burn hotter and faster. So we always keep the oxygen away from, the furnace or candles or a source of ignition, and you're fine there. The other risk, as I was mentioning, is oxygen toxicity. So if divers go under immense pressure and they're breathing pure oxygen and they come up too fast, they can get oxygen trapped in their bloodstream, and this is known as oxygen toxicity. You actually can't get oxygen toxicity with EWOT for a couple of reasons. One is, I mentioned the reservoir is 1,000 liters. It's about 12 hours of oxygen in a normal day. If you were just breathing oxygen and sitting on the couch, it would probably, at normal pressures, it would take you over a day of continuously breathing oxygen to get oxygen toxicity. So the reservoir is not big enough. But even if it were, it's that really amazing synergy of oxygen with exercise. Because when you're exercising, you're producing a massive amount of carbon dioxide. And this carbon dioxide works as a back pressure that forces oxygen out of the bloodstream and into the cells. So even if we could magically make you do EWOT for hours on end, you actually still couldn't get oxygen toxicity. And those are really the only two known issues with oxygen. And obviously we've been using it in hospitals and all sorts of places for a long, long time.
Yeah, it definitely has been used. There's a lot of people, in 2020, what happened, there's a lot of people that came out with oxygen therapy, and using oxygen has been used for a number of years. So yeah, thanks for sharing that and putting, people's minds at ease to understand what's happening, and also understand that it's not just for elite athletes. Like you said, it's been literally the cause of disease is not having oxygen.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
So do people come to your clinic? Can they purchase this product? How does it work?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We have an e-commerce site, so you can go online and purchase a system. they look a little bit more intimidating than they are. I just had an 85-year-old man the other day call me and tell me he got his together in 15 minutes. So,
Amazing.
yeah, it's
He
really
definitely
simple.
had a lot of oxygen beforehand doing it, yeah?
Well, we're dealing with people
Uh,
who have chronic illness, and like, so we purposely designed this thing so it's really simple to use. It's like you don't have to download an app and stand on your head and say a secret sequence of letters and numbers to make the thing work. It's a hard switch sort of thing. You flick it on and it starts
Amazing.
pumping oxygen, and away you go. It fills a reservoir, and then when it's full, you take it, put the mask on, and do your exercise.
Amazing. And how often do these people do it? I know you said 3 months. Do they do it every day? Do people then do it once a year? Like, how does it work?
For optimal results, I recommend folks work themselves up to 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Now we have folks who are starting where they'll only do it once a week, or maybe even less when they're getting going. And I always recommend you listen to your body and start slow and build yourself up, because oxygen is also a really powerful detoxifier. Um, People don't know this, but first off, about 70% of all your detoxification happens through your lungs. So, the other thing is, when your body's trying to remove toxins from your body, it literally uses an oxidation reaction to break it down from more complex molecules to simpler molecules that our kidneys and our liver can eliminate. And so when you start doing EWOT, if you have these cells that are starved of oxygen and they've let all the trash build up inside the cell wall, and now you flood them with oxygen, they'll start dumping these toxins. And it'll build up in your bloodstream because your elimination organs can't keep up with it. And that's when you can have what we call a detox reaction, which is you just kind of feel like feverish or like you have a flu. So you don't need that. People like that happens to very sick people when they start, generally like 1%, but
Yeah.
just listen to your body and start slow and build up. You shouldn't have to go through that.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely amazing. Going back to the thing that you said earlier about the oximeter, you can measure it. Yes, it's not the best measure, but would that be something that could be useful to measure to see if there is benefits? Would you see benefits on that?
You really won't,
Okay.
because I mentioned, so the way an oximeter works is it looks at the hemoglobin on your red blood cells and looks at how many of them have oxygen attached. And most of us, if we put it on right now, we'd see like 99%. So there's no room for more oxygen on your red blood cells. However,
Okay.
like I'd mentioned, we actually flood this blood plasma, which normally doesn't carry oxygen. And so there's not there's not an at-home tool that can measure that readily.
Yeah, amazing. Oh my gosh, Brad, you've just blown our minds with oxygen. Where do you see oxygen therapy going in the future? What do you see it looking like, or what do you want it to look like?
Well, we really started this company to kind of help people gain access to this. So when I was looking around for oxygen therapy, and EWOT specifically, it was so expensive. Everyone wanted to sell it for $5,000 to $25,000, and when I was really sick, I always felt like someone had their hand out asking for $25,000 for some new experiment. It's like, how many shots do you have at that? Before your wallet's drained. And so we tried to make this as economical for folks as possible. And that's really where I see the future is helping more people become aware of it and more people be able to use it and get the benefits from it. So that's the biggest thing for folks.
Yeah, and I love it. And I love that you're sharing this information out there with people and that you've built something that's amazing and it's used by most individuals. It can be used, like you said, you had an 85-year-old build it and is able to use it. So you're doing some absolutely amazing work. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so much.
No, you're most welcome. So before we finish off, as this is a natural health podcast, what is, besides oxygen, what
Yeah.
is your health hack that you do that keeps you at an optimal level and really healthy, and yeah, be in the state that you are today?
Well, yeah, it's certainly that protocol. Beyond that, I still do love some herbs. I use a variety of herbs for different things. I make some of my own tinctures here and there. And I think it's also about just eating well, sleeping well, and trying to get yourself some time outdoors and hopefully some time in nature.
100%, especially in nature that has lots of greenery, because that also has huge benefits for our mental health and physical health, like it's been proven in the literature. So that's amazing.
Yep, a lot of negative ions in the air when you're around the trees, isn't there?
Yes, 100%. That's what they call like forest bathing. There's like so much research on that at the moment. And it's like, it's just like there's research on it. It's just like, just get out in nature. Like literally, that's the research. Get your feet on the ground, in the forest,
Earthing.
on the beach. Let's just be out there and see as much green as we can.
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's
blue.
good for the mental health and it's good for your physical health. So what the heck, right?
100%, 100%. Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate it. In the show notes, I'll put all your website and the details about the product. So thank you so much for joining us on Natural Podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on Natural Podcast. And remember that you're pure love, capable of living life to your fullest expression. Information provided here is opinion of Mahela Ragout and is for information purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Ragout does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mahela Ragout, any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Ragout be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting your doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Ragout nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.